Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Jesse's Card Empire, bringing you yet another EDH deck tech today. It's been maybe 4 days since Tier Grid went up, and my god, y'all are loving it. It's already like tripled in views, so I guess we're going back to doing more EDH deck techs. That doesn't mean all the other alternative content that I do will be going away, but since it's getting the clicks, I'm going to give you more of those than anything else. So, what are we doing today? Well, today we are summoning the Gate Guardian.
Comes!
What is it?
I don't know.
He is pain beyond description.
He'll mark the graves with your inscription. Gate Guardian!
Okay, enough jokes aside. This deck is called Golos, Guardian of Gates, or Golos, Gate Guardian. The reason for that is it is a Golos deck that also capitalizes on playing Guildgates. One of the biggest complaints of 5-color decks, in a 5-color deck, your mana base is going to end up quite expensive. Knowing me, it has ended up that way, but the initial idea of this deck was to try and keep the price down a bit by having Guildgate strategies, and also I just want to win with Maze's End. It's just a sweet way to win the game. So, that being said, I have the deck laid out in front of me here on the table. We're going to be going over some key cards like before, again, trying to keep these shorter. The full link will be in the link to the full deck list will be in the description. Please do me a solid, like the video, subscribe if this is your first time viewing the channel. I will have more Commander deck techs coming out regularly since you guys are reacting to them positively. On top of that, I stream on Twitch 3 times a week, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Come check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv Jesse's Card Empire. Link is in the description. And follow me on Twitter. But enough of the self-promotion. I lied. One more thing. I also sell cards on TCG Player. You can swing by the shop, pick up cards that you need, and that helps me out a lot. Especially with Kaldheim coming up, I will be opening up a ton of Kaldheim product to sell the singles back to you guys. Which usually I take a loss on those videos, but it gives me an excuse to open up a ton of packs and have a ton of fun. So there is that. That being said, let's get into the deck. So this is a lands-based deck, so obviously lands matter. We're playing 38 actual lands, which I know for some lands matters deck that count seems a little low. And that's a fair assumption, but from what I've found in my testing of this deck and playing this deck is that I've only ever gotten mana screwed, I think, once, and it was literally like after I had laid out the deck once and not properly reshuffled because all my lands were in a clump. So outside of that one time, everything else has been pretty good with this deck. We're going to go ahead and dive on in here, starting with a creature-ish area. Again, we're doing these by categories and not really like the different card types. But one thing to note is I run one creature in here that has nothing to do with doesn't synergize with the deck. It's literally a one of, and that's because I do agree with a lot of Commander deck builders that say you should always have some way to interact with the graveyard. And in the earlier builds of this deck that ended up, I had a Niv Mizzet in here as well, and I was trying to do Gates and a Niv Mizzet together, and I decided I'd rather just focus in on the Gate strategy. But left over from that is a Kunranos, Hound of Atheros. And the nice thing is I still have land graveyard synergies that I want to use. Things like the Gitrog Monster and Elvish Reclaimer, Splendid Reclamation. And if I played some of the more generic graveyard hate, that would prevent my synergies from working. But Kunranos does what I need it to do, and it just stops creatures and casting spells from the graveyard, which is exactly what I want, because I never cast any spells from the graveyard. The most I ever do is return lands to play from the graveyard. So having Conrenos is very, very nice as a way to hedge that. The rest of the creatures are divvied up into basically two categories. There are creatures that get us lands / let us play extra lands, and then a bunch of landfall creatures that take advantage of this. And then one card that bridges the gap in between the two. So some standouts from letting us play more lands than we're supposed to be able to play on a turn. You know him, you hate him, he was banned in Standard, Uro. Gitrog Monster gives you nice little value. Also things like Ancient Green Warden are in here to let you play lands from the graveyard. Again, talking about that graveyard synergies. And then, of course, land classics like Azusa Lost But Seeking, and Dryad of the Elysian Grove, Oracle of Maldaya, cards of that nature. The one standout I really think that matters a lot in this deck is Ashaya, Soul of the World. This turns all your non-token creatures you control are forest lands in addition to their other types. So Ashaya, Soul of the Wild is really nice. It turns all your creatures into landfall triggers, which is great. Obviously not tokens, but you don't have a ton of tokens in here. The card that bridges between additional landfall and has a landfall-ish trigger is AC Tyrant of the Gyre Strait from the Commander Legends Simic Lands Matter precon. Card's just good. But that means that not only do you have another way to get additional lands into play per turn, but also now you're drawing cards as well, which is giving you additional lands to play. As for landfall triggers, all of the standouts that you think are here are probably here. Avenger of Zendikar, Royal Elemental, Scoot Swarm, Lotus Cobra, Rampaging Baloths, Tatiova, Omnath Locus of Creation, and Omnath Locus of Rage. So you have all your landfall triggers that you're going to be stacking up and getting multiple of per turn to hopefully outvalue your opponent. And that is one way that the deck can win, is you just play these amazing landfall creatures and then subsequently play lands and win the game. None of the low to the ground aggro ones are in here because that's not really what the deck's trying to do. So that's there. Outside of that, those are the main ways. We got to talk about some things that help support the deck. Over here we have mana ramp and fixing in this category right here. Not all of these are ramp. Some of these are also utility as well. Big utility card, Crucible of Worlds, it's now starting to get expensive again, but it had its reprint just a couple years ago in Core Set 2019, I believe. But then you also want to play things like Chromatic Lantern, which makes all your lands rainbow lands, which is very important because a lot of your mana costs in this deck are all over the place. You have double green, triple blue, triple white. So getting one of these rainbow effects is very important. Now, whether that's Chromatic Lantern, Chromatic Orrery, or the aforementioned Dryad of the Elysian Grove, just depends on how the game plays out, but either way, those are very important. What else? A big splashy card that I haven't mentioned that is, I think, really good is Reshape the Earth. This is not a ramp spell by any means. If you're playing this as a ramp spell, you're playing it wrong. But what it does do is it gives you a nice way to just get the last chunk of your lands into play. Maybe get enough landfall triggers that you just win the game on the spot with something like Rampaging Baloths, or you have like a Royal Elemental out and you just take every one of your opponent's cards. Or Avenger of Zendikar and you overwhelm them with plants. So different ways that can go about in winning you the game. As for utility spells around in the deck to kind of just help smooth out the rest of the game, I am playing Lightning Greaves in here. Just it's a Commander All-Star. Helps you get in aggressive when you need to go aggressive. For some targeted removal, we are running. I will let you know the removal package in here is very light. It's more focused on the synergy of just trying to make a bunch of things to overwhelm your opponent, or you ramp into the win con pretty quickly. But we do have a Mythos of Nethroi, which is really nice because you can basically just get rid of anything with it. If you want to play more targeted removal than the one piece that I basically play, I have a couple landfall creatures in here that also fill in that role, but that's the main spell. Wrath-wise, we have Gates Ablaze, which since we are playing 11 different gates, can get pretty big for 3 mana, dealing out plenty of damage. And then also we have a Time Wipe. Again, the Time Wipe is kind of left over from when it was a Niv-Mizzet deck, so you could switch to a more efficient Wrath if you prefer. But the Time Wipe has stayed in here for 2 reasons, and that's one, the actual return a creature thing I found to be really relevant. You pick up one of your good landfall token generators, wipe the board, and then next turn you replay your landfall token generator, and you start making more lands come into play again, and it rebuilds your board. And also, I happen to have the full art promo one, and I really like it. So, you know, I decided, why not? Some other utility spells in here. You're in a 5-color deck. Bring to Light is an amazing card that you should be playing. Basically, if you're in 5-color, I don't see any reason to never be playing Bring to Light. It literally just says pay 5 mana, get anything that's 5 CMC or less from your deck, and put it directly into play. So, well, sorry, not anything. A creature, instant, or sorcery card. So, you know, it still leaves plenty of options. I just had a coffee. Why am I so sleepy? For some weird land interactment that I really like, we're actually playing 2 sagas. I normally only play land destruction if it wins you the game, and this is one of the few times where it may not win you the game immediately, but it should hedge your bets really hard. Fall of the Thran is a saga where you destroy all lands, and then the subsequent 2 turns of the saga, each player returns 2 land cards from their graveyards to the battlefield. So that's going to give you 2 landfall triggers, possibly a third if you have lands in hand. So the goal is you drop this with several landfall creatures out. You blow up all the lands, but then every turn for the next 2 turns after that, you're basically getting 2 to 3 landfall triggers a turn, which can help you win the game pretty quickly. The other half is Mending of Dominaria. It's another saga, but it's going to mill you and mill you, getting you creatures back from yard, but then on the final chapter of the saga, you get to return all the lands from your graveyard to the battlefield. And then take the rest of your graveyard that isn't lands and shuffle it back into your library. So the goal is, it's late game. People are down to minimal resources. You maybe have out a couple landfall things, and then you just slam Fall of the Thran. You blow up all the lands. Your opponents have no way to ramp back out of this scenario you've put them in. And then you slam down Mending of Dominaria, and then you get back all your lands. You get 1,000,000 landfall triggers. And then you just win the game. Alternatively, if you're having land recursion is also very important, because if you're trying to win off of Maze's End, and your opponent blows up one of your mazes, then that's a problem. Felidar Retreat is another fantastic card. Again, another way that you can kind of get a turn all your lands into additional value. This lets you go wide. One of several cards in here that does. Or once you're wide enough, it can make all those tokens a lot bigger by giving them +1/+1 counters. We do play 2 Planeswalkers, Nissa of Shadowed Bows, to 1 because landfall on it, on a Planeswalker, giving it a loyalty counter is bonkers. That seems really good. The animate a land into a 3/3 for a turn is kind of meh. I don't really care for that. But getting a creature card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of lands from the your hand or graveyard directly into the battlefield with 2+1/+1 counters is amazing. And the ability to literally play Nissa and then double landfall, be able to do that ability because you've landfalled twice, and then still have the Nissa around, genius. Love it. Love the card design. I think it's actually a really well-designed card. It's not too overpowered, but here in Commander, I think it's actually a Planeswalker that's going to do things. And then we also have Lord Windgrace from the Lands Matter Jund Precon like 4 years ago. He just helps you churn through your deck. He digs back your lands. He does all sorts of cool stuff in the deck, so he works really nice there. On to card advantage. We do only really, because we do a lot of ramping, and that's where most of our advantage comes from. But our actual card draw is a little limited, but very powerful in the bit that we do have. The biggest, most expensive piece being Horn of Greed. Whenever a player plays a land, that player draws a card. Now, that is a symmetrical effect. Everyone gets that ability. However, you're probably going to be able to utilize on it more. So there is that. We have Escape to the Wilds, another card that was banned in Standard. It's really powerful. Basically, it's a 5-mana draw 5. They're exiled, and you can only play them until the end of your next turn. So they're not in your hand, so your opponent can't interact with them through Thoughtseize or anything. And then on top of that, it gives you an additional land. So again, if you just, let's say you Escape to the Wilds and it's 5 lands, you haven't played a land for turn, there's 2. The next turn, 2 more. A 5 mana, at the worst case, this card is 5 mana, put 3 lands into play, because I guess you don't get the additional land drop on your next turn. So that is the absolute worst. That is if you hit 5 lands off the top. And most likely that's not going to happen in a 100-card deck with 38 lands. Like, the math on that is just not there. So that is a great way to go about it. And then also Guild Summit. Guild Summit is a fantastic card for a Guildgate deck. It's going to draw you a ton of cards, both when it comes into play and over the course of the game. I find that if you're in the late game, you have a bunch of gates and nothing to do, you play this, you tap a bunch of gates in response, or because on its ETB activation, you draw a bunch of cards. Or if you play this in the early game, every time you play a gate, you just get to draw a card. That, coupled with the fact that we have several cards in here like Tatiova and AC, that just when you play a land, draw a card, that seems really good. As for the lands, obviously we're running all 11 Guild Gates. And you say, 11? Don't forget Gateway Plaza is the rainbow one that has the Rupture Spire ability. It's still also a gate. There's also Plaza of Harmony, which is not a gate, but it sees your... it comes into play and it wants you to not to have gates in play. If you have 2 or more, when it ETBs, you gain 3 life, and then you can tap it for 1 mana of any color that a gate you control could produce. So very quickly, it becomes just a rainbow land for the deck that could also incidentally gain you 3 life. Maze's End is obviously one of our win cons. We are a lands deck with a lot of different land names, so Field of the Dead is in here. And then finally, I went for... Obviously, this is meant to be, you could do this cheaply, but then my nature took over. So I have a bunch of fetch lands in here, including the ones that are the more generic ones. Obviously, Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, Prismatic Omen, or Prismatic Vista, and Fabled Passage. So those are different ways to double trigger the landfall ability twice. Even if you don't have an additional land in hand, you can still be like, okay, let me play Prismatic, Prismatic Vista, crack it, go get a basic. That's 2 landfall triggers right there, and that can matter a lot. So this is one of the few decks where I think fetch lands are extremely important in Commander. They're always good. They're never bad. Unless you're in like a monocolored deck, then what are you doing? And even then, there is some wiggle room. But this is one of the few decks where I feel that you need fetch lands for the deck to run at its peak. This is one of them. Also, like Corvald, the sacrifice-based deck, really likes that. So that's the deck in a nutshell. I hope you enjoyed the deck tech. Really fun to play. Again, you're ramping, you get to play big spells, and then you get rewarded for ramping more past that. So again, really fun deck. There's of course many ways to take a lands matter deck. This is just one. This is just a guide on how I built mine. Again, full deck list is in the description below if you want to go full carbon copy. I find this deck to be really fun. It is a tad pricey because, again, land stuff and Magic gets pricey. So thank you guys for watching. And as I said at the beginning of the video, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel a lot. I really want to grow and be a bigger Magic content creator. Because if I could do this full time, I 100% would. That being said, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace!